You're listening to the Patriot Nation podcast.
All right, welcome into another edition of the Patriot Nation podcast. As always, a member of the CLNS family of podcasts. If you're not on there already, make sure you like and subscribe all of our stuff on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts as well. There's some great content over there and some of the best, I think, some of the best Patriots reporters working for CLNS. So make sure you get on there and do that. As for us, I'm Pat Lane here with my guy, Matt St. Jean. And Matt, we're in the We're like fully into the off season. Memorial Day weekend, of course, today is Memorial Day, and so there's not a ton to talk about football wise, but a lot going on. Thank you to all the people out there to all the families out there, people that made that ultimate sacrifice for this Memorial Day that we're celebrating today. But football wise, not a ton to talk about. We're kind of not only in the off season, but kind of in that kind of weird spot in the off season where there's not a ton of stuff happening.
Yeah, it's the dead zone. That the period where the die have been cast here with the teams. We know who's on what team. Except for Aaron Rodgers, and I think we know where Aaron Rodgers is going to end up anyway. Yeah. But we haven't started to uncover the dice just yet, so it's just in waiting mode here until things really get going. That's why we will have our series starting next week, reviewing the 21-game win streak of the New England Patriots from 2003 to 2004. We're going over every game, so we're going to have some fun with that in June to break up some of the lull. But yeah, I think the biggest news we have is rule changes or lack thereof.
Yeah, and that's really, what's going on. Q out here says he's missing Pat so much, just waiting for Pat's pods now. So we appreciate that. Daniel saying go Pats, and of course Nelson checking in saying what's up. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We appreciate you being here. So let's get into some of those rule changes. Of course, lack thereof wise, it seemed like the NFL really wanted to ban the tush push, and the Patriots were one of the teams. I think I'm happy about it. The Patriots are one of the teams that decided to not rule against it, that voted to keep it, and I just think. Look, it's a football play. And at the end of the day, that play works for some teams and it doesn't for others. Ask the Buffalo Bills how the tush push works. Right? I mean, they had multiple 3rd and 1s and even 4th and 1s against the Chiefs they couldn't pick up, even with the tush push. And so you have to have the personnel to be able to do it. Now, the Eagles do it better than anyone else, right? And so, I don't know, like that's an advantage to the Eagles. That's great. But then stop them. Like, I don't know. What do you want me to say? And that's really what it comes down to. And I know the NFL wants it gone, but sorry, here it is.
Yeah, I'm not upset at all about it sticking around. It's a fun play. I really enjoy the kind of competitive advantage that the Eagles have picked up for themselves here. I enjoy the just display of strength. One of the core aspects of football is kind of that, which team is tougher. And I'm not sure if anything gets to that more than what you see in 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 goal line stand type situations. And this just adds another wrinkle to those, which is fantastic. I'm more anti-tush push than you are. I think, I think the most interesting argument against it, the most contentious probably, is the player safety one. Because I think there's two things here. On one hand, we are talking about putting the most important players in the league, the star quarterbacks, intentionally in the middle of a pile with the strongest players on both teams, each pushing against one another as hard as they can.
Yep.
I can understand why that is going to make a lot of people apprehensive, especially, the league has spent the last 20 years trying to protect the quarterback as much as possible, no matter what. To then say, okay, you can't breathe on a quarterback after he throws the ball. but we can have 3 different running backs and a tight end stand behind him and push him into you as hard as we want. But now we're going to like that. That I feel like is a little bit weird. The flip side of this is that there's basically been no injuries with it. So like in theory, this seems like it should be a very dangerous play. In practice, that hasn't happened yet.
Well, and not just that, you control it, right? It's not as though
Yeah.
the defense is jumping at the quarterback. I am voluntarily putting the quarterback in harm's way. If I want to do that, I don't see what the issue is. And so that's the way I look at it. Now, I will say, I think that some of the stuff, the pushing to me is that I do sometimes have an issue. We've talked about this about, there was one play, and I can't remember who it was, but this one play where, the running back's running for a first down and he gets stopped like a yard short. And then 4 offensive linemen get behind him and start pushing him, and his feet are off the ground. The running back's feet are off the ground. And they're basically carrying him another 7 or 8 yards. And it's just like, what are we doing? Like, we've lost the plot if that's what we're doing. Like I can see everyone stacks up together and we all push and shove like a rugby scrum and we try to pick up a yard or 2. I can see it. I get it. I understand where it's coming from. But like, I don't know, when we're downfield already and someone, pushes you from behind and your feet are off the ground and you're not even doing anything anymore, like what are we even doing here? So that part of it is tough. And then how do you litigate that out of it, right? Like if you can push people from behind, which by the way was never a rule. I don't know when did they take that away? Because it always used to be illegal to push for the offensive player to push the offensive player.
I can look that up.
forward.
Don't know off the top of my head. My first inclination is after the Bush push stuff in college football that probably restarted a discussion on it at the time
Maybe.
he got the rules changed. Yeah, like when I was a kid watching the NFL, like you couldn't push players from behind. So to
Right.
me, I see the tush push. I don't object to it at all on a level of like competition, like competitive advantage, or on a physicality thing. It just doesn't look like a football play to me. It looks like a rugby scrum, which is awesome. I really like rugby. I'm not necessarily itching for football to take that from rugby.
Right. I also do think that I will say, I think if the Eagles were to get rid of the tush push, let's just say we got rid of the tush push, I still think the Eagles would be the best QB sneak team in the league. So like, I think ultimately it comes down to the fact that they can get it with Jalen Hurts, just Jalen Hurts. It doesn't have to be the guys behind him pushing him either. I don't think, and so, yeah, the tush push is a thing, sure. But like, I also think that it doesn't really matter to them, at least. I don't think it really makes that much of a difference.
Mm-hmm. Looks like in 2005, the NFL made the penalty only for pulling and carrying, the helping the runner one. So you're not allowed to pull a runner forward, but as of 2005, you could start pushing from behind.
Got it. Okay.
Which I believe is when the Bush push happened. Although I could be wrong.
That sounds about right. I think Reggie Bush was probably drafted sometime around 05, 06, I believe.
The Bush push itself was in a game in 2005, so I think the rule change would have actually happened before it.
Okay, so yeah, he was drafted in 06.
Yeah.
So nevertheless,
it was just a coincidence that those two things happened the same year. But so this is in theory, like, this has been a thing for 20 years, and it looks like the foul was first created that you couldn't push someone either in the late 1890s or the early 1900s, according to Wikipedia. And they cite a 1904 game when the penalty was called. At one point, it was originally a 15-yard penalty that you were not allowed to push. So, yeah, it is. That is one thing to me that's funny, is that this was something that was not legal in the sport for over 100 years, has been legal for 20 years, and now the idea of getting rid of it is seen as like against the sport. Like it's been around for 20 years, and there's 100. Like both sides of this, I feel like have pretty long traditions, pretty good arguments to say it's part of the sport.
Right, I agree with you. That. So, so the tush push, the changes. Thank God they left the playoffs as well the way they were. I just don't think we talked about this already anyways, but if you're going to get rid of the seeding, just do away with the divisions. Just get rid of the divisions. It's just like, it's not feasible to me. And I also think, and I saw so many people tweeting out about, get this 6-11 team off of my screen and blah, blah, blah. And I don't want to watch these teams. Well, if that team sucks, go into their place and beat them.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that hard. If they're not good and you're good, go into their place and beat them. Right. And we saw it happen this year where the Lions won, obviously, in their first game at least. Right. But the who was it? The Vikings, right? Lost in the first round.
Right? In what was a neutral site game, not even a road game.
Correct. And so that's one of those things where you start looking at it and you say, okay, well, yeah, they're supposed to be really good. Well, they didn't win. Win the game. If you're that good, win the game. And I understand maybe that your division's really good and you get screwed. But you're basically getting a bye. You're playing a terrible team. You can't win that game against a bad team.
Yeah.
That's my point, is that, it's like, all right, sure, maybe that team's the worst team that makes the playoffs and they theoretically are the seventh team in. That's not how it works. And that's not how it should work. Like, the whole point is that you have the division set up. They've been this way for, 25 years. Just leave them that way and don't mess with it. And like I say, and we talked about it anyways, we talked about it last week, but if you want to reseed them based on record after the first round and get rid of all of the division stuff after round one, that's fine. I have no problem with that. If that's what you want to do, I don't have a problem with that, because what you're doing then is you're saying after the first round, everyone that wins their division earns a first round. They earn a one home playoff game.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily earn two, but you earn one home playoff game. Well, then we can turn around and say, okay, well, you were the 5 seed, but you actually have the second best, you have the third best record in the NFL. Now you're going to get a home game. Right? Like, and I think that can make a difference. But for me, it's just like, win the game.
Yeah.
Like, we can have that discussion, but to me, it's, man, like, winning your division should matter.
I agree. And I also feel like it happens. Like, I feel like the 4 and the 5 seed are usually about equally good anyway. Like 90% of the time, they're about the same. So like, I don't feel like this needs to be changed. I wouldn't object to I want to have the discussion, but I see the merit to reseeding after a first round, or even, for the conference championship. If you wanted to say, hey, Vikings, you're the 5 seed, you're going to have to go on the road for the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. But if you make it to the conference championship game, that is just seeded by record. So that if it's you against, the 3 seed, okay, you can host them. That I could be okay with as well.
Right.
If we wanted to see little tweaks there, just so that, like, on the rare occasion a 5 seed is significantly better than like the 3 and the 4, they're going to have the opportunity to host an extra playoff game down the line potentially. I think I could get on board with that. I don't know. I feel like the system has worked for a while, and I also think, the anger of fans saying, we shouldn't have to go on the road, I think is I feel like that's a good thing for the sport. You want some anger, like that. You want that narrative. You want, like, you get the high stakes games in the regular season, and then you got a fan base that's going to be like, oh, we got screwed by this, and we got to prove them wrong. Do it. That's a great story. That's going to be very entertaining to watch. Great content. And either, you're going to get a fan base that's going to be up in arms saying, wow, we have to be the 5 seed, we got to go on the road. Okay. Either you're going to have a chance for a great story, or everyone's going to get to laugh at them, which is fantastic content either way. And it's going to drive, in this day and age, if you want to drive social media engagement, that's a great way to do it.
Absolutely.
I think that just because people are angry at some of the outcomes that a system creates, like the playoff system, does not mean the system's broken. It's not going to be a perfect one. And having a little bit of anger come out of it, I think, is a positive here anyway.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with that. And I will say, TJ makes the point here, and Paperwaves kind of said the same thing, but it was better when there were 6 teams in the playoffs. And I have a hard time disagreeing with that. I mean, the 7 seed really hasn't done much when they get in there. And so, that, yeah, that's one of those things that's like, do we really need that 7th team in the playoffs? I don't think we do, but this is what it's become, right? This is what it's become. The same thing happens in the NBA where you have the play-in games, and it's just like, it's stupid. It's kind of silly, but this is what happens now. And so they want that extra team in, and and that's what they're looking for. So of course, it's a little different in basketball because you can have a home game if you're that 7 seed or whatever. But nevertheless. So, anyways,
I believe the only 7 seed to do anything thus far was Green Bay in 2023, and that was the team that went to Dallas and dog walked them in the
that's
first round of the
correct.
playoffs.
Dallas is
So
that's so Dallas.
yeah, and that Packers team honestly probably should have gone to the NFC Championship game because they outplayed the 49ers in that divisional round game out in San
Yeah.
Fran and just couldn't pull it together to actually win.
Yeah, it's
do
funny because
wonder
that was a
that.
team that was just kind of all over the place during the regular season and kind of gelled together at the end of the year.
Yeah,
Love's
which I
first year starting and
suppose
everything
is
else like
what the
that.
7 seed was kind of
Yeah.
intended to make sure that team gets in, but for the most part, it's been a whole lot of mediocre like Steelers teams taking
Yeah.
that seed. It was
Which by the way, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
it was the oh my god, the teams that have had the 7 seed in the AFC. It was the Bo Nix Broncos, Pittsburgh in 2023,
Ooh.
the Skylar Thompson Dolphins
Ooh.
in 2020. Which it's funny, they were awful. They also went to Buffalo and gave them a game.
Yeah.
And then in 2021, it was also the Steelers. Another one of those just awful Steelers teams, and they went to
Yep.
Kansas City, and it's like I don't know, I don't think we're getting a lot out of those games, so I would do away with those.
It's very true. It's very true. And I will say, in the AFC, it's less likely for one of those top teams to falter. In the NFC, sometimes Dallas sneaks up to that 2 seed, and then you can see them kind of blowing a game. But if you look at the top of the AFC and the top of the NFC, like you look at Philadelphia and Buffalo and Kansas City, and even if you want to throw San Fran, I don't know if San Fran's up towards the top anymore, but San Fran or even Detroit in the mix, you just feel like those teams aren't gonna puke all over themselves in the big moment. They might still, but you just kind of feel pretty good about them in a big game. And so that's really what it comes down to is that the 7 seeds playing one of those teams and just is not very beatable. One of the things in the back of my head that I've been thinking about quite a bit is the thought that the Patriots could end up like the Dallas Cowboys. That kind of always felt like a possibility, right?
Oh yeah.
Cowboys were a great team in the 90s. They were awesome. Their fans just hold on to the fact that they won those Super Bowls. And oh my God, they were so good 30 years ago, right? And, it hasn't been 30 years, obviously, in New England, right? It hasn't even been 10 years. But still, it just feels like, that's a very real possibility. That scares me a lot to think about that we can be Dallas. We can be like Dallas fans at some point. I don't think we're okay. We are very obnoxious, I will say. Lots of people in Patriots Nation are incredibly obnoxious, and so I can certainly see that. I'd like to think we're a little bit smarter than Dallas fans, but I don't know, maybe not. But we'll see ultimately what happens. But that is one thing that's always been in the back of my head that worries me is like, are we gonna look back in 20 years and be like, oh my God, the Patriots are the Dallas Cowboys, and that's just that's rough.
Yeah, I will say I think what the Patriots kind of already have going for them here is I think they have on paper, in theory, if it plays out the way we're hoping, a better quarterback coach combo than the Cowboys have had at any point since that Super Bowl. Because the Cowboys have kind of been in this cycle where they have not been able to get both at
Right.
the same time. They had Bill Parcells come back, but it was with. I'm looking at the leading passers here for the Cowboys when Parcells comes in 2003. It's Quincy Carter, Vinny Testaverde, Drew Bledsoe, and then Tony Romo, his first year there in 2006. Not exactly a murderer's row of quarterbacks.
True.
And your Tony Romo eventually develops into a pretty good player for you. But by the time he's that guy, it's, Wade Phillips, who is a great coach, but was not a very good head coach. You got Garrett there, who was like just as mediocre, like definitely not a bad coach, and also definitely not a good coach in the NFL level.
Right.
And then to Mike McCarthy, who's just been more of that. You do make the comparison though, and it's like you see the Cowboys win their last Super Bowl in '95. That was with Barry Switzer as their head coach. He goes.
It was just a nobody.
Yeah, he goes after 97. Troy Aikman is done after 2000. They have, I don't even know, Dave Campo is their head coach. He goes, and then you bring in Parcells, who's, the notable veteran hard-ass coach. So if that's how this goes for the Patriots, this will be the Bill Parcells years probably.
Yeah.
I don't know if Mike Vrabel has earned that.
He hasn't, but
Parcells, but stylistically at least.
Yeah.
So,
Anyways, that's something that's been in the back of my head ever since Brady left. That's kind of been in the back of my head of like, man, like, you never know, like, and hopefully they get back there and hopefully they're able to actually compete. But it's just like every time the Cowboys get to the playoffs, even when you think they're going to be good, and everyone talks about they're going to be so good, and they're just terrible every year. And like even when they're good, they choke in the playoffs, and they make Tony Romo fumbles the snap on an extra point attempt or whatever. And it's just like, how did they lose that game? And those are the things that were
Since they won their last Super Bowl, they've had at least 7 seasons of 11 or more wins, and in none of those you're making the conference championship game, which is just unbelievable. Like that really is like there's a lot of organizational stuff that has gone into that for them, but there's also a certain element of just really bad luck. Or like that Mike McCarthy loss to the Packers was definitely just poor coaching.
Yep.
So we'll see how this looks this year. The fact that they went 12-5, 12-5, 12-5, 3 consecutive years, and only made it out of the wild card round once.
It's brutal.
Which that's the other thing. Like if you're winning 12, they're 2 of these years they're winning 12 games and winning their division. Like any other point in NFL history, that's getting you a bye in the first round, and then you got to win 1 game to get to the NFC Championship, which I definitely think kind of gave him some issues here in the 2021 and 2023 teams. I don't remember. 2021, that was the year they lost at home to the 49ers. Is that game that ended? That ended with Dak Prescott spiking the ball with no time left. That's that one.
Unbelievable, dude. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, the
down 6.
Cowboys. Yeah, the Cowboys' failures have been, ownership that cares a little bit too much and lets things play out. Like Jerry Jones has been way too conservative as an owner. He lets things play out for longer than they should before being willing to make a change. Like you look at how many years was he there? Jason Garrett's there from 2010 until 2019.
Yeah, it's crazy. Too much.
And he's not a bad coach. There's some good teams in there, but at a certain point, rip off the Band-Aid and try something new. Mm-hmm. They lucked into 2 good quarterbacks, not in the first round, in Tony Romo and Dak Prescott. You know how hard that is to do, and to not maximize on it, because you're too conservative with your coaches. You should have fired them more often. And they also have been horrendous at handing out contracts because they don't plan ahead for contracts. They just wait until the last second and then get stuck paying way more money for their own players than they should have to.
Yeah. So we'll see. Hopefully not. Hopefully not, boys and girls. But that was something that was just rattling around in my head over there. So I'm trying to think if there was something else that we wanted to. Oh, one other thing that we wanted to, I guess, just quickly. Someone had asked about should the Patriots trade for Trey Hendrickson or Terry McLaurin. The McLaurin one is interesting to me because for those of you that haven't seen, McLaurin's going into a contract year. He's not 30 yet, but he'll be 30 in September. Obviously has great rapport with Jaden Daniels. Had a great year last year. I'm curious to see how that's going to go. I can't imagine Washington giving up Terry McLaurin unless they get some insane offer, for him. They don't have another receiver. So, like, trading Terry McLaurin, I think, would be absolutely insane. I know he's in a contract year. I know he probably wants a new contract. But, like, if I were the Commanders, I would sit there and say, you can have basically whatever you want. Like, we're going to make this work because we have a young quarterback. We don't have to pay him. This is when we can pay guys. We just made the NFC Championship game. We can't now trade our best player, right? So, to me, the McLaurin thing, you have to do it. I don't know if the Patriots have a spot for Trey Hendrickson. I will say they can make a spot for him. He's a good enough player that they can make a spot for him. But I just don't know if it's feasible for the Patriots. You're going to have to pay him, and you get to pay him a pretty significant contract. Now, the Patriots have a ton of cap space, but do they want to devote more resources to an edge position that has young players and a few proven veterans as well? I don't know. Like, does Braden Swinson get boxed out of time? I don't know, right? Does he not get any snaps because of that? Does Keon White not get any snaps because of it? Is that a worthwhile investment for the Patriots? Not only are they going to have to pay Hendrickson, but they're also going to have to trade something for him. I don't know what the Bengals are going to want for him, but I don't know if it's worth it for the Patriots. Could be, depending on what you tell me what the amount that you have to give up to get him. And, I'd be okay with it probably as long as it's like a day 3 pick. Sure. Then you sign him to a big contract. They have the money, whatever. But I don't know exactly what it looks like.
Yeah. Terry McLaurin to me is just the better fit. I agree. His body control, his ability to win down the field, he's a playmaker, really good player. He and Stephon Diggs would pair really, really well together.
I agree.
And that kind of like Diggs was used a lot more as an underneath weapon last year where he could just kind of win with his route running and create separation. And if you have that, the possession of tight end of Hunter Henry and then McLaurin as a playmaker, like that is genuinely a very good group of players. I think the concern with McLaurin is that like you're gonna have to buy high on him if you want him because he's coming off a great year and like he's a very good player. He's 29. He's going to be 30. I don't know how much I'll put it this way. If Washington's willing to trade him, I'm going to be a little bit concerned about why, which is going to make me a little bit concerned to actually offer the money. If they don't want to pay him, why not? What do you know that's causing you to not want to pay him?
Right.
I will say this on the flip side. You mentioned that they can't trade him. It would be a very Belichickian move of them to move him now. If McLaurin could get you back, would get you back a first rounder from a team, I have to imagine he's getting you a first rounder. If you don't think, if you have concerns about him aging in his profile, and you would rather sell a year too early than pay him and be stuck holding the bag, I could see this being a very savvy move from Washington to trade him for a first rounder that they turn around and use to draft someone else to pair with Daniels. I don't know what that would mean for them for this season, because then you're stuck. You got nothing. But yeah, I think that'd be interesting. Hendrickson, I mean, more likely to come here because the Bengals are poorly managed and they might just mess this up, and you can get him for very cheap. He's a good player. He makes you better, and like it's either like first of all, you can never have too many pass rushers. It's probably him and Keon White starting then. Harold Landry and Braden Swinson are your backups, and Anthony Jennings is in there as well, somewhere maybe. So like that's better than what you have now, pretty significantly in my book. I think the concern with Hendrickson is just always going to be like he's older, kind of like McLaurin, and the receivers and edge rushers at a certain point will tend to fall off. So you just both of these guys, I'm okay with spending some real money. You just want to make sure that you have a little bit of protection in the contract so that if things fall apart with them with age as they progress here, that you're not going to be stuck with a really bad investment.
Yeah, Hendrickson will be 31 this year. So he's not super old, but he's old-ish. He'll be 31 in December,
That's
so it's not
that's
most of the
around the
season.
point when edge rushers usually start to diminish.
Yeah, we saw what happened to Matthew Judon, right? So,
Yeah.
but if now Washington, what the thing about Washington, they trade for Deebo Samuel, they trade for Laramie Tunsil, like it feels like they're going all in. It feels that way, right? And so trading McLaurin in this situation, when you have Noah Brown, Deebo Samuel, Luke McCaffrey, right? I can't forget Patriots legend KJ Osborne, but
Oh
like
yeah.
they have nothing at wide receiver, nothing at wide receiver if they trade McLaurin. And so I just can't imagine them doing it. I suppose they could. And I would do it. If I were the Patriots, I would do it. Now, I don't know if I'd be willing to trade my first round pick. I guess if you felt that strongly about it and you think you really thought you needed another wide receiver, a first round pick for Terry McLaurin would be worth it. But I can't imagine that that's going to be the case.
But I think if you're trading him and you're Washington, I think you would need a receiver back in a deal, or you're immediately, you're going to have a second deal in place with another team to bring in a veteran. Who that would be, I'm not quite sure. It's going to be a worse player than Terry McLaurin, but trying to bring in someone who you think is, like this is honestly would have made a lot of sense if you're going to trade McLaurin, signing a Cooper Kupp probably makes
Yeah,
some sense for you as that.
I agree. And I can't imagine like at this point, if you're the Commanders at this point, if you were going to move him, I feel like during the draft would have been the best time to move him. But that's just me. But who knows? But nevertheless,
I
all right,
just I just opened up the leaderboard on Pro Football Reference to look at guys who could potentially be veteran trade targets, and remembered on here that Jonnu Smith finished 15th in the NFL in receptions last year
yep,
between Jerry Jeudy and Jacoby Myers.
yeah, it checks out.
You know who else would actually have made a ton of sense for Washington if you're trading McLaurin is Devontae Adams.
Yeah,
That would be
yeah.
a
I mean,
really good
and again,
fit.
that's for me. That's why, like, I know they traded for Debo, but that's not enough. It's just not. Debo's not a number one wide receiver. He never really was a number one, like a true number one wide receiver that's going to win on the outside, is going to win with his route running. That's not who Debo is. And so, you know, you can't rely. Your entire offense can't rely on Debo Samuel. Now you have Jaden Daniels, of course, and you have Zach Ertz, who's a good player still. But I think they'd be nuts.
Yeah. I agree.
To do that.
You know what the other move I think you consider making there is, if you're moving on from McLaurin, if you can get him cheaper in a trade, is Tyreek Hill.
That's also fair too.
Similar profile and receiver, a guy who clearly wants to win, and you might be able to get him at more of a discount depending on where the Dolphins feel like they are in this whole thing. So if you're essentially, swapping out Terry McLaurin on a bigger contract for a short-term Tyreek Hill and moving up from like the third into the first round, maybe that's something you consider.
That's actually a good point. I hadn't thought about that one. That's a good one.
But I think we're too late on all that stuff. This is all draft conversation. Like
and I
the other
kind
thing
of
is, like,
feel
if
that.
maybe you're trading Terry for a first rounder in the draft that we were just in, but the receiving class wasn't that good. That was the other issue. So
Right.
it's not. You could try to do the old, Stephon Diggs, Justin Jefferson swap there, where you trade your receiver and try to draft one. But in this class, that feels more likely to be like the A.J. Brown, Traylon Burks swap.
Yeah, I agree. Also, Tyreek's cap hit this year is 28 million almost, and next year's like almost 52 million. Now, obviously, you can redo that contract and everything else, but like that's a wild number. And I know they get the money, but like still, it's a wild number for a guy that
Well, for Miami,
is
look at where
31 this year.
Miami is right now. You're paying that much for an aging receiver who, Tyreek Hill played in all 17 games last year, did not reach 1,000 yards.
Right.
He fell off. The fall off is, I think, here. He
Yep.
just last year is 2023 is 29. He has almost 1,800 receiving yards in 16 games. In 2024 and 17 games, he has 959. Like, that is obviously it's not all on the receiver, quarterback
Yeah,
situation,
but
offensive
still.
line, all.
Yeah.
It seems like the cliff is here for Tyreek Hill.
Does seem like it, doesn't it? Does seem like it. So, anyways, we lost Matt. Okay. I'm going to take this time to just remind everyone. I mentioned it before, but I'm going to take this time to remind everyone about CLNS. Make sure you get on and subscribe and like all of the products at CLNS. That means the Patriot stuff, Patriots Press Pass, of course, obviously, right? If you're not doing that, like, what are we doing? But the NBA History Channel, Bruins Rinkside, and Celtics All Access as well. So make sure you get on and like and subscribe, all that stuff as well. A ton of good content at CLNS, not just the Patriot stuff. So make sure you get on and like and subscribe, all of that stuff on YouTube and also anywhere you get podcasts as well. All right, seems like Matt is back. So let's pop him back up here. Let's pop him back up here. There he is. He's back.
I made the mistake of I thought I was backing out of the Tyreek Hill stat page, and I hit the back button on my mouse, and I was actually still in our streaming service. So
I love it.
Just left the room.
That's awesome. So, anyways, so I did want to talk about, before we go, there was some discussion this week, and it happened. Barth was talking. I saw Barth talking about it. Saw a few other people talking about it as well. Some of the guys that were getting run at the OTAs, specifically Land Larison, was getting runs with the number ones when Ramondre Stevenson was out, seemed to kind of have leapfrogged Antonio Gibson a little bit. And I just think, I don't know if I want to talk about that specific instance. One thing that I'm very excited about this year, and I think, Taylor Lewan, right when Vrabel was hired, Taylor Lewan got on and did a whole, just did like a quick, like almost like a 2-minute video, just basically saying, like, if you're a Patriots player right now, like, you better get your stuff together. Like, you better be on your P's and Q's, and you better be ready, because Mike Vrabel doesn't take prisoners. He doesn't care who you are. It doesn't matter to him. He is going to push you and push you and push you, and nobody is safe. And I think that that's what I'm most excited about it with Vrabel, is that everything is now a competition. There are no sacred cows. There's no nothing. Like, whoever's the best player is going to get the opportunity. And so if Land Larison's having a better camp than Antonio Gibson and or Ramondre Stevenson and or Travion Henderson, Land Larison's going to get the call. That's the way it is, right? And I don't think it's going to happen, by the way, but that's what he's going to do. It's similar to a Belichickian way, I feel like. Maybe not so much towards the later years, but the way that it's a meritocracy. If you're good enough, you play. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you were drafted. I don't care where we got you. It doesn't matter. And so I think that that's one of those things. And by the way, Reformed is talking about Bradbury. Bradbury can suck all he wants. That's fine. If he comes here and sucks, he's not going to play. And so, like, it doesn't matter if he sucked and they signed him. It doesn't mean he's going to play, right? And so, like, I think that that's one that I'm looking at, that, like, okay, yeah, he's a veteran and he has some experience. But if Jared Wilson comes in and is better than him, see you later. Like, he's gone, and so I think that that's one of those things that's what I'm most excited about, is the fact that I feel like he's going to push all of these guys. And it's not going to be, I feel like it was very comfortable last year. These guys were comfortable last year, and it's not going to be like that this year.
No. I also do wonder if it's just like, because we heard about Anthony Jennings, Javon Baker, Jakeem Bell all running with, the backups at points and OTAs too. I wonder if part of it is them, like, just intentionally mixing things up to make sure that people are getting reps alongside different teammates, so that as we're in the learning process, you're learning how to play with different people. And it could also be that just like, and they have Antonio Gibson in one role and they know what he is, and they don't feel like, they he knows what's going on. He's a pro. Maybe he doesn't need the reps with the top ones. And someone like Larison, they want to give that opportunity because he's young and still learning to see how he responds, which could be the case across the roster. I don't believe the media has been there for every one of these. I think it was just the one. So, it could be that something happened at one of these and there's just a lot of rotation going on in OTAs. So we're seeing one snippet of what's been a rotation. And it could also mean something. Maybe Lan Larison's doing a good job on the whiteboard and they're trying to see if that's translating. That would be fantastic if that's the case, because they need running back depth. That is going to be a concern for them. And, if Trevion Henderson gives you what you think he can give you, that definitely can make one of Ramondre Stevenson or Antonio Gibson expendable if somebody else is playing well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, too, the other part of it for me is that when you look at what the situation is in the wide receiver room, I think that's what makes me the most interested in it, because he doesn't care that Jalen Polk was a second-round pick last year, or that Javon Baker was a fourth-round pick last year, or that, I guess Kayshon Boutte doesn't matter, was sixth-round pick. But, and Kendrick Bourne is this guy and so on. And so he doesn't care about that stuff. It's the guys who are the best players. Those are the guys that are going to play, period. And if you don't like it, then see ya, hit the bricks. And I think that's the attitude that has to happen. You haven't earned anything yet, and so I think that's where we stand now. How is Baker going to take to that? How is Polk going to take to that? How is Boutte going to take to that? We don't know, right? But if they can't deal with that, they're not going to be here, right? And it's that simple. And so I think that I like it, and I like the idea that it doesn't matter who the player is; they're going to play if they're playing the best.
Yeah, and I think that was needed. And it is always the balance with a team that's young, because for how long did we hear with Belichick, man, why wouldn't you play the young guys? Why wouldn't you play the young guys? I was here in the preseason in 2023 when we were talking about stuff like that.
Yeah.
And in 2022, we were talking about stuff like that. I remember in 2022, some of the offensive line rotations being very strange in the preseason. And I was being like, why aren't young guys getting opportunities here? And, it is just about finding that balance between rewarding good play in camp, rewarding good practice reps, rewarding good work on the whiteboard, while also understanding that, sometimes guys need to play through the mistakes to get better and need to come out on the other side. And I think Vrabel has done a very, very good job of talking the talk on that, of finding the balance between those two things, and, allowing players to develop while also rewarding the guys who are actually being the best in the building every day. I will say the track record in Tennessee does not necessarily indicate the walk was walked there. I know at points it does, at points it doesn't. There's a lot of blame to go to the GM there, which shifts some off of Vrabel's plate. I think that's absolutely fair with some of the players that got brought into that organization. But, Titans had some rough years there at the end. So we'll see what that means for New England. And I think we've said it. I think there's going to be an intense camp battle at a couple of positions, and we're going to get to, by the time we get to 2026, it's going to be irrelevant because all of the players involved in the camp battle probably end up being gone.
Kind of feels like it. Kind of feels that way, right? So,
yeah, we're doing the Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, Kendrick Bourne thing right now, and I would not be at all shocked if all three of those guys are gone by the end of this season.
I actually would think, unless one or two might not make a huge jump, they may not. That's something that we wouldn't even be thinking about. We'd be hoping they're not on the team in 2026.
Yeah.
So,
well, and that's the goal here, is to get better with time. Kendrick Bourne was amazing for the 2021 Patriots. Does not mean that he's the guy for the 2026 Patriots.
Right.
A lot of time between those 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah, totally true. And so that's what we're all going to try to figure out, this year and see what the Patriots can do. Because ultimately it comes down to, can they play well? Right. Mm-hmm. And who are going to be the guys that are going to go out and perform? And I think, when you look at the young guys, you look at rookies that are trying to kind of earn their keep in the NFL. I think you do have to kind of do a little bit of a balancing act. Are the veterans going to be more ready to play? I think there's no doubt the veterans going to be more ready to play because they're veterans. But if the talent is there and the work ethic is there and the smarts are there and you can see that, I think for a team like this, playing some of the young guys is important. Now, back in 2016 and 2017 and 2018, when you're trying to win a championship, maybe not, right? Maybe not so much. But, do I wish Tom Brady had been a little bit easier on his rookie wide receivers? I do. Do I also look at some of those rookie wide receivers and think none of them made it anywhere else either? So maybe it wasn't a Tom Brady thing, right? So it's not like, oh man, we let that guy go and he dominated somewhere else. That's not the case. It never happened.
N'Keal Harry did not make it else. Whatever happened to Aaron Dobson after he left the Patriots? I couldn't even tell you.
I don't think he went in there. I think I will say about Aaron Dobson, in Aaron Dobson's defense, his career was mostly derailed by injuries. By the way, he's the wide receivers coach at Southern Miss right now. That's interesting.
Good for him. I remember he shadowed with Belichick at a Patriots practice at one point.
Yeah, he was at Marshall, which is where he went as an offensive assistant, wide receivers coach last year, and then became the wide receivers coach at Southern Miss this year. So that's interesting. I mean, he just could never stay healthy, unfortunately. And he was never healthy. And I think he was an okay player. He wasn't a great player, but he was an okay player for them.
I mean, he had almost 600 yards as a rookie. Like Dobson actually had one of the better rookie years for one of these bad Patriots receivers. A lot of that happened because the other guys weren't any good. He just had to get somebody had to catch the football.
Right.
But yeah, injuries were a big thing for him. He missed a late stretch in the 2013 season.
That 2013. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't think he ever looked quite like he got hurt in the Broncos game that year. It was the comeback. Missed weeks 13, 14, and 15 as well. I don't think was quite the same after that.
No.
That team ran out of gas by the playoffs. And then in 2014, they signed Brandon LaFell over him.
Yeah.
He's inactive. And then he was inactive for 8 of the first 12 games and then hurt his hamstring and got placed on injured reserve. And that's kind of his career,
Yeah, unfortunately. And Gonzo Duke's right. He had one of the best college catches ever. Supposedly, he had never dropped a pass in college and had that one just absolutely insane catch at Marshall, which I'm assuming you've seen it, Matt, but reaches back with one hand and just makes an insane catch. And it's just one of those.
It was ranked second in ESPN's top 10 plays of the year.
Really?
I wonder what was ahead of it.
That's interesting. I don't know. What was that,
2011?
2012, right? Wouldn't that be 2012? Or was it the year
that catch happened in 2011, apparently?
Interesting. Okay. I don't know.
Now I'm looking this up to find. Now I'm curious what beat it.
Well, that's always one of those funny things. It's like, who had a better play than that? But the Patriots have had a lot of bad luck with a lot of players, unfortunately. Whether that comes to scouting, whether that comes to actual play on the field, whether that comes to things not lining up well, or guys getting hurt, or whatever the case may be. But Aaron Dobson gets taken over Keenan Allen, right? Just yikes. They trade up for Chad Jackson in 2006, and the pick that they traded up with Green Bay with, they take Greg Jennings. And it's just it's stuff like that where you look at it and you just say, man, and of course 2019, we don't need to rehash that, but it's some of those stuff where you look at it and say, man, we had the right idea, just drafted the wrong guy. And so hopefully they've drafted the right guy this year, and we can kind of go from there. But even the hard part is some of the stuff that the Dominique Easley pick, as an example. The Dominique Easley pick is one of those picks where that's Belichick just saying, man, if we can get this guy, if this guy's actually healthy, he's going to be incredible.
And bought in. That was the other issue with him.
Right. But he had no knees, and he wasn't bought in, and he stunk. And it was you knew it. You could see it from a mile away. The Patriots drafted him, and it was what are you doing drafting this guy? And they needed that pass rush in the middle. But, that guy would have been a top 10 pick if his head was screwed on straight and he had knees. Unfortunately, his head wasn't screwed on straight and he didn't have knees. So that's why he wasn't drafted in the top
Well,
10. That's why he didn't work out for the Patriots,
like Easley, they pick him 29th. So
Yeah.
like it's Dominic Easley pick is like the Gronk pick, except this one doesn't work. It's the same type of thing.
True.
Yeah, and he didn't. He went to the Rams and played for
He did
a little bit. He was
nothing.
like decent. He had 3.5 sacks in 2016, so that's something. But yeah, he just didn't. It didn't translate for him. And I honestly thought he had some moments in 2015. I thought the 2016 things might come together for him, but yeah, clearly the team did not agree. He was also young.
Enough.
He was 22 his first year, so he's a younger player.
Right.
Really freakishly talented. It's just, that is a boomer bust pick. This guy, if it works out for him, you are drafting a Hall of Fame player at 29 overall.
Right.
Or he's going to be, he's a guy who could have been out of the league by the end of his first year, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. The hard thing is like DeMarcus Lawrence goes 34, 5 picks later.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, you didn't see that? But, it's one of those things where
Dominic Easley's tape was
incredible.
Freaky.
Absolutely incredible. He was an absolute monster. But it just didn't pay off on the field because that's not who he was. And he wasn't bought in. And so, it just, unfortunately, those things happen. And I think I actually really like your comparison with Gronk because I think it makes a ton of sense. Where, the Patriots took a chance on a guy that was hurt a lot and it just didn't pay off. But, what are you going to do? Anyways.
Okay. Wait, now I was curious about this because I wasn't sure. I looked up to see where Dominic Easley was ranked on the consensus board that year because I had no clue. All I remember is what they said on ESPN when he was drafted. They said top 5 talent if he's healthy. He was ranked 51st. Dominic Easley was actually 2 spots behind Jimmy Garoppolo on the consensus board. So very funny. Some other names in that range. It's making me laugh. Kyle Van Noy was 46. Yep. Bishop Stanky, if you remember him,
I do.
Was 48. Troy Nicholas, the tight end out of Notre Dame, was 50.
Oh, God.
I really wanted him. I thought he was going to be so good.
Oh, no.
Very wrong.
You were very wrong. I hated that guy from the beginning. I hated him. I just hated the prospect of him being
Yeah. DeMarcus Lawrence at 56. Devontae Adams was at 41. Imagine Devontae Adams in 2014. Here's the thing. That's a guy. He took like 3 years to develop. I don't know if
I know. Who was 29? Who was 29th on the consensus board? Just out of curiosity.
Stephon Tuitt.
No. From Notre Dame. Yeah, I think he went earlier than that. I think he was a first round guy.
I think he did. No, actually, he went 46. So he was still on the board.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
Let's see. So the guys who were taken after, I'm curious. Jimmy Ward was the next pick. Bradley Roby was the pick after that. Those 2 guys. Man, you take one of those, and that might stop Bill from drafting another second-round defensive back.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Those guys were both fine.
Yeah. Kyle Van Noy, I mean, imagine if he starts his career in New England. That's a very interesting hypothetical. He's just in New England from the jump.
Right. Well, they didn't give up much to get him, so didn't really hurt a ton.
Some other tight ends. There's 2 names for you: Austin Seferian-Jenkins and Jace Amaro.
Oh, yeesh! Everyone thought Seferian-Jenkins was going to be awesome, and he had like an okay year, and then that was that. And then he went to the Jets, and they were like, "Oh yeah, that's right, I stink."
I remember, this is something we talked about on here, especially that season. It felt like Patriots need to draft a tight end because you've lost Aaron Hernandez at that point, and Gronk was hurt the year before.
Mm-hmm.
And, if Bill was listening to us, instead of taking Dominic Easley, they're probably taking one of these tight ends who ends up being a complete bust as well, which I think shows you how much of a crapshoot this is.
100%.
Yeah. And
Richard Rodgers.
Some I'm sure some of our debates around this last draft are probably going to end up looking a lot like that, where we are having a very heated discussion between two different players, both of whom go on to do nothing in the league.
True. I mean, there's an argument that Richard Rodgers is the best tight end taken from this draft, which is wild to think about.
That's crazy.
But he put together a nice little career for himself.
He did.
Not like nothing crazy or anything like that, but still,
He was a real player.
Yeah. So.
That was
anyways, all right. Now we're just babbling on about the 2014 NFL draft. So.
Well, this is different from the drafts we usually talk about.
That is true, I suppose. There's the Coney Ealy pick, or the Coney Ealy was drafted in 2014, and of course the famous Coney Ealy trade, the famous Patriots Coney Ealy trade, where they traded a second-round pick for Coney Ealy. Except it's not what they did at all, but
moves from the second to the third for Coney Ealy. Yeah,
they literally moved down 3 spots for Coney Ealy, but they traded a second-round pick for Coney Ealy.
Yes. Some other players just looking at who were drafted that year. Brandon Cooks was a 2014 pick, and he lasted to pick 20. I wonder if he's still on the board at 29, if that's someone the Pats take. Like I mentioned, Devontae Adams, Pats passed on him. That's a very what if type of thing. Kyle Van Noy was in that draft. Morgan Moses, he went in the third round.
But does Devontae Adams develop in New England? Probably not.
I don't think he does, but I do think it's interesting to look at that. Charles Leno Jr., another tackle who people have wanted in New England at points, was in that draft. And we talked about him, I think, last year. Allen Robinson. Oh, Taylor Lewan was in that draft.
I'm sorry. By the way, Eric Ebron is the best tight end drafted in this draft. But nevertheless, because Eric Ebron was taken number 10. But if you look at the top of this draft,
100% not worth that pick.
No. But Jadeveon Clowney, good player, not great.
Mm-hmm.
Khalil Mack, incredible. Jake Matthews, good. Mike Evans, Hall of Famer. Anthony Barr, pretty good. Just looking at the top 10. But Sammy Watkins, decent. Greg Robinson, certainly not worth number 2 pick. Blake Bortles, the boat, fine.
Future Robinson ended up in New England, right? No.
That's old Greg Robinson.
No. Who am I thinking of? Jonathan Cooper. So I'm thinking of.
Oh, okay. Yes, that was the Arizona though.
And that was the next year, I think.
Yeah, but
he got picked.
Eric Ebron, Taylor Lewan, OBJ, Aaron Donald, Kyle Fuller, Ryan Shazier, Zach Martin, and CJ Mosley. If you look at that from 9 to 17, I know Eric Ebron's in there, so Eric Ebron's not great. But you go Anthony Barr, Eric Ebron, Taylor Lewan, OBJ, Aaron Donald, Kyle Fuller, Ryan Shazier, Zach Martin, CJ Mosley. That's a hell of a run right there. That's a hell of a run with a ton of great players.
And of course, the run ends right before the Jets pick.
That's right, baby. Calvin Pryor for the Jets.
And yeah.
And something named Jawan James for the Dolphins.
Yeah.
So.
Ooh, D Ford.
Also, how is it possible Brandon Cooks never made a Pro Bowl?
Patriots legend D Ford was in this.
That's right. How is it possible Brandon Cooks never made a Pro Bowl? How's it even possible? He had 1,000 yards every year.
He is a Hall of very good player.
Yeah.
See, he's produced, but yeah.
What's funny about Cooks is that when you look at what he was able to do, right? Now, his first year, he didn't have 1,000 yards, but then he had 1,000 yards straight from 2015 to 2018. And then he did it again in 2020 and 2021. I mean, he's been a solid player, but the thing is he never goes over, his most is 1204. Right? So he does do a lot, but it's not, it's never oh my God, this guy's amazing.
Brandon Cooks is the best wide receiver 2. And that was the issue, is that he was the best wide receiver 2 you could possibly ask for, who kept producing a wide receiver 1 because he's catching the ball from Drew Brees and catching it from Tom Brady. And those teams know we cannot pay him what he's asking for. He's not going to be worth it for us. He doesn't have quite that impact. He's a good player, but it was just always right there.
Yeah, that's true. He went from Brees to Brady, obviously, to then Jared Goff in 2018. And of course, they make it all the way to the Super Bowl, and he drops that pass. I guess the pass gets broken up by Jason McCourty, and but he had 1,200 yards for the Rams. They signed him that massive contract, and then traded him before 2020 to Houston. So
another name here. We're remembering old dudes. Clinton Dix.
mhm.
Another guy. He went from like Pro Bowler to traded because he was way too bad in like a season and a half.
Yeah, like
That
out of
was
the league.
yeah. He actually played until 2021. He was Pro Bowl in 2016. By 2018, the Packers are trading him in the middle of the season. 2019, he plays all 16 games. And then in 2021, he comes back in for 2 games. But it just totally lost it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So,
Ooh,
all right.
Rashid Hageman. I remember that name being one thrown around for the Pats in that draft.
Yeah. All right. Let's get the heck out of here. We've done enough in the 2014 NFL draft. Nevertheless, thank you.
Oh, wait.
everyone
No,
for-
we haven't. We haven't.
Oh, God.
Because we have another tight end name that Matt was obsessed with that year and thought we needed to draft. CJ Fedorowicz, baby.
Oh,
He's going to be the next thing.
He was not. He was not the next thing. Yeah, CJ Fedorowicz. Jesus. So,
I
all
was
right.
very excited about a lot of tight ends in that draft.
Yes, and they all stunk. Eric
They
Ebron was
all
fine.
stunk.
Eric Ebron was fine, but
Yeah.
he wasn't great. He made a Pro Bowl, but he wasn't great. And same thing with Richard Rodgers, was a good player, but never really like a tight end one. You know what I mean?
It's just useful.
I mean, the fact that Richard Rodgers was the second best tight end in that draft is not a good thing. Not a good thing. So,
past last pick in that draft, Jeremy Gallon. Do you remember him?
from Michigan.
Yeah, he was one of my favorite Michigan receivers. Tiny, he was like 5'9".
Yeah, he was
But
small.
if anyone remembers this, Michigan's first ever night game at the stadium was played against Notre Dame in 2011, and Michigan's down late. They drive into scoring range. Screen pass goes for a touchdown. They take the lead. Notre Dame comes down. They score a touchdown. This is all in the last minute and a half. They score a touchdown with like 20 seconds left to retake the lead. And then is that Denard Robinson, I believe, a quarterback for Michigan, drops back. They call like a switch release verticals type thing, and Jeremy Gallon just gets totally lost in the defense when Robinson starts to scramble. So with like 20 seconds left, he gets behind almost everyone on Notre Dame, catches it, runs out of bounds like the 10-yard line. So Michigan has enough time for one play to go for the end zone before kicking a field goal to send it to overtime, and they hit it. So
it's wild.
One of the craziest football games I've ever seen. Gallon will always have a soft spot in my heart for.
Well, there you go. Shout out Jeremy Gallon, Patriots legend. No, I don't know if he ever made the team, but
I don't. There are no NFL stats. Listed next to his draft selection. He was way too small, man. I believe
he was like 5'8", like 160 pounds or something like that.
He's listed at 5'8", 185 on here. That 185 seems suspect.
Yeah, I agree.
He can play, but he was just a college
too
player.
Small. Yep, exactly. So, all right, that's enough of nostalgia for us tonight. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. We appreciate you. We're going to be back Thursday night so we can revisit. Maybe we'll revisit the 2016 draft. On Thursday night.
If you guys have draft classes or draft picks that you would like us to go back over,
we will
tweet them at us, and we'll go over Thursday.
Or comment down below.
Yes.
And we'll get to it. So, all right. Anyways, thanks for tuning in again. CLNS, like and subscribe. All the stuff on CLNS, of course. Patriots Press Pass if you're on here right now, but also the Bruins and Celtics stuff that we do as well as some of the other, obviously, Pass Nation Network, but also the other Pats shows on CLNS as well. Anyways, that's what we got. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We appreciate it, and we will we'll talk to you on Thursday. Be good to each other and go Pats.